and welcome to the Give Me Liberty podcast of the Standing for Freedom Center at Liberty University, where we defend life, liberty, and truth to ensure the foundations of freedom exist for the next generation. I have a very special guest today. Her name is Xi Van Fleet. She is the author of Mao's America, A Survivor's Warning, and a staunch opponent of Marxism. She survived Mao's Cultural Revolution and fled to the U.S. for freedom. Today, she has a dire warning for Americans that if we don't change course, we could face a similar fate. Xi, it is so great to see you. Welcome to the Give Me Liberty podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Well, I appreciate the work that you do to educate Americans, especially the youngest generation, about the threat of Marxism, the fight for the preservation of our freedoms. Your story is fascinating, and it's one that every American should hear. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience during the Cultural Revolution, what you faced in China growing up?
Yes, I was too young to be part of that revolution. I was only 7 when it started in 1966. That lasted for 10 years. But the worst was the first 3 years. And that is really the absolute, like a civil war by the young people, Red Guards, because Cultural Revolution was a revolution of the youth. And those youths were not in the military. They're just college students and as young as elementary school kids. And the reason they could do that, the Mao could mobilize them and use them as his own private army, was that they were all indoctrinated. By the time the Cultural Revolution started, and Mao had 17 years to indoctrinate the entire generation. So what happened to me is that I lost 2 years of schooling because everything was closed. Everything was shut down because the principals and the administrators were ousted by the kids. So no one was running the school. So everything was in chaos. If you ask me to summarize, it's a world turned upside down. So I witnessed the Red Guards tearing down the statues. Sounds familiar to the Americans today? They changed names of everything. Change names of the schools, streets, institutions, food brand, everything, and make them more up to date to be politically correct. They really burn books, raid people's homes to get all those things. It's called for old tradition, old culture, old ideas, old habits. Everything that's old, everything that is traditional has to be gone. Once they destroy everything in public, they went to people's homes and get those hidden for olds. And so now I think most American people have heard, imagine what can be, unburdened by what has been.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what the Red Guards did. Erase the history, erase the past, the heritage, the tradition, the value. And why do they want to do that? Because they want to replace it with one dominant ideology, and that is Maoism.
Yeah. You know, I'm reminded of what the serpent said in the garden in Genesis. Hath God said, and did God actually say that you would surely die? And that in many ways echoes that same kind of philosophy and that same kind of phrase. Imagine what can be unburdened by what has been. You came on the scene in a very vocal and public way just a few years ago in the Commonwealth of Virginia. This is our home state here for Liberty University. Mm-hmm. But at Loudoun County School Board, you appeared at those meetings talking about Marxist ideas, critical race theory. You know, what compelled you to go out there so boldly with courage to give that kind of speech? What was it that made you get out there and go public?
I have to go back a little bit. In 1986, I was able to come to United States to pursue my graduate study. And when I left China, I feel like I have escaped communism. I left it behind me. I come to a country of freedom and I will be fine. I will live happily ever after. And like many Americans still believe it can't happen here. I believe the same thing. It can't be happening here. This is America. So I did not pay much attention to politics. And I thought freedom is automatic. How wrong was I? But eventually I start to notice things that make me kind of relate to my experience in China. And in 2020 is absolutely a wake-up call to so many people, including me. And this is no longer a sign here, a sign there. This is a full-blown Marxist revolution. This is Chinese Cultural Revolution 2.0. And so I finally told myself, I got to do something. I cannot just be an observer or be my commentator. Yeah, just say, oh, this happened to me before. So eventually I decided to go to the Loudon County School Board meeting. Even that, it took a lot of, guts for me to go there. It is in public, as public speaking was terrifying to many people, including me. So I went there and I've done that, did my duty. I had no idea that it went viral. And eventually, Fox News called, Hannity called, and I have to make a big decision to say yes or no. Knowing if I say yes, I will be on the media spotlight. But it is later when I start to talk to people and I have interview, I realize people do not know anything about Chinese communism. They know nothing about the Cultural Revolution.
Yeah.
So eventually, I convinced myself, this is my mission. My mission now is to educate Americans. So in 2022, I quit my job and spent a whole year and wrote this book. And this is my warning to Americans.
Talk a little bit, if you will, maybe the parallels that you see in wokeism in the United States, what you experienced and what those currently are experiencing in China. What are the similarities between those two things?
Well, first of all, you have to read the book because I really lay out. But that book is about the parallels. And I can just give you a general summary.
Yeah.
First thing I already said, a cultural revolution is a revolution of the youth. And that what happened in China is Mao was convinced, he did not need much convincing. All those kids were indoctrinated so much, they believe nothing but their great leader's words. The leader's word is the supreme order. Whatever Mao asked them to do, they will do it. Even if it means to betray their parents. Many of them did that. They reported to their parents, and their parents end up either in jail or being executed. So break up the family, and all that is hallmark of a cultural revolution, which we can see it right here in America, and cancel culture. And I already also mentioned a little bit. And now today, Americans are no strangers. And the Western world is no stranger to the cancel culture. Tearing down the statues. And in Virginia, in Richmond, we have this absolute spectacular cancel culture, tearing down all this monument. They have a monument called Monument Boulevard. Now it become Monumentless Boulevard because it's all taken down. And that's what happened in China. And so anything old, anything they consider that is not, anything Chinese has to be removed, destroyed, because Marxism is not Chinese. It came from the West. So they want to remove everything. And political identity. That's how Mao was able to divide the Chinese people. Everyone has a label. Everyone was assigned a label. You're either with the camp or the class called Red Class. You are the allies of the revolution, or you belong to the black class, the enemy of the revolution.
Yeah.
And the party decide what label you should have. Once you have that label, you're what of black class, you're finished. And that's what we see here in America. Only that in China, you will be called a counter-revolutionary. A counter-revolutionary is a hat that fits everyone. If they don't like you, you're counter-revolutionary. And how about here? If they don't like you, you're racist.
Yeah.
Right? You're racist, you're a bigot, you're extremist, and it's exactly the same thing. And that's why I said it's remarkable that I get to live through two cultural revolutions. Two cultural revolutions. They are the most important cultural revolution in history. One in China 50 years ago. One is here.
Yeah.
And living through with the millions of fellow Americans. The sad thing is that a lot of them can recognize it. They don't know. This is history repeating. Why they don't know? Because they never learned that history. Why they never learned that history? Because never taught. But why it's never taught? That's a great question. Because they don't want people to know. Those in control of our educational institution, they don't want people to control. Once to know, once they know, they can see that. That's why history, past is so important. When you know history, you can really understand today. There's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah. Amen. Well said. I think, many Americans, if they do recognize it, they're seeing it in Hollywood, they're seeing it on Wall Street, they're seeing it obviously in the media, the nightly news, all the bias that's in the media. They're seeing that spill over, of course, in education all across the country, K through 12 education, obviously universities that have been infiltrated long ago, decades ago, Columbia University, Harvard, the Ivy League, all of that. I think what some Americans would be shocked to find, however, is that this has also infiltrated the evangelical world, Christian institutions,
Absolutely.
right? Christian schools.
Absolutely.
And you have a story about that. I wanted you to share a little bit about your disinvitation. You were invited to something. I think it was a university in Washington State, a Christian university, so-called.
Yeah.
And you were uninvited from an event where you were to come and speak to a Christian school.
Yeah. But I have to go back a little bit further.
Yeah.
And go back to 1949 when the Communist Party, CCP, took over China. And they did many, many things. But religion, they targeted religion. That's one of the first thing they did. And they still, in the university today, the professors are still teaching the students communism is an economic system. They want to have, the means of production owned by the state and whatever, which is true. But most importantly, communism is a religion. It absolutely can't tolerate any other religion. So they have to destroy all religion. In China, we have Confucianism, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam. Everything has to be destroyed. And during the Cultural Revolution, they finish it up. They have to destroy it. And that's why the very fact we're having this woke revolution in America is the church has been destroyed. And so I think Charlie Kirk, I heard him say probably 80% of the church are woke. It's not surprising. You can walk around. You walk around in cities, and all those churches tell you what they are. They have a rainbow flag. They have BMN flag. They are woke. And then the rest, they keep silent. Only a few churches are still fighting. That's our problem. So going back to what you mentioned, yes, I was invited by, I can't remember the name, but it's a Christian.
Whitworth? Is it Whitworth University?
Whitworth.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, in Washington. And I was okay, great, because I want to talk to young people. I think it's important that I have direct contact with them and tell them my story. So I was informed later. I was uninvited. Why? there is a student government organization in the school, and they evaluated my tweets and said, I am a hateful person, and my views are extreme. My views on communism is extreme. So that was just absolutely, I'm just glad because I made news. It made news all the way to Brazil. That a Christian school think that a communist survivor is too extreme to talk about her experience and compare that to what's going on in America. So, but we had off campus, the people are determined to hear from me. So we had an off campus meeting, and it was very successful. So that tells you that Christianity has really been attacked so severely. And that is really the really problem. And so I always believe the only way to fight back and communism is Christianity.
Yeah. No, well said. Well said. You know, it's interesting. I heard a pastor preaching, a sermon not too long ago where he talked about a closed country in Southeast Asia, very likely China, that had a state-sanctioned, a state-sponsored Christian bookstore. And the Christian bookstore had all kinds of books that you would find in America on spirituality, on devotions, faith, friends, finances, that kind of thing. But it had very little, actually had no books really on the church in terms of citizenship responsibility, the church in terms of its role in greater culture, the church as an organization that God has established on earth, his kingdom represented on earth. There were no books on the church's power or the church's prerogative or the church's pursuit or the Great Commission. Instead, it was all about individualized, hyper-spiritual Christianity. So China, I think the Three Self Church that basically endorses communism, China has a state-sanctioned version of Christianity. And I think for the longest time, previous generations like the baby boomer generation or the greatest generation, World War II, when we talked about Christianity and communism, they're wholly incompatible. Communism is atheism. It does away with Christianity. The reason you'll know it's communism or the reason you'll know it's Marxism is because it will absolutely put an end to religion. What we're seeing in actuality, though, and in practice, is that Marxism doesn't get rid of. Instead, it wants to take over. It wants to infiltrate, hijack, and take over. The way it destroys is not to remove Christianity, but rather to borrow, almost like a skin suit, the Christian church and the Christian faith in order to promote Marxist ideology. So the way we're seeing it, like you just said, the four olds, the way we're seeing it in the United States is wokeism is wanting to call itself Christianity. Social justice is wanting to call itself Christianity. Marxism calling itself Christianity and saying, these are just analytical tools. We can help you out. This is how you can see reality and da-da-da-da-da. And so it's infiltrating the church, and then it's causing a cancel culture within the church, canceling you from being a Christian speaker to warn people about Marxism.
You're absolutely right. Actually, it started in day one by Karl Marx. He borrowed all this concept and subverted, twisted, and then preached it out to the ears of the Christians. Those things sound very familiar. Equality, right? Equality, but they twist it and then become equity. And then they twist it as original sin. Original sin in China was wealth. If you had anything, if you just had a little bit more than your neighbor, you were condemned as the enemy of the state. And here, what's the original sin in America? It's whiteness. And they get all this, and all this concept was familiar to people because we, here in America, it's a Christian culture. So that's why they could really really just hijack people and weaponize people's goodness. And they say love. You just love whatever, and you don't judge. Who are you to judge? And then it's your truth, my truth, and all this they are so effective. That's why there are just so many people. And I follow a few pastors on Twitter. They're absolutely the wokest pastor you will ever find. I call them communist pastor. They say that Jesus socialist, Jesus is LGBTQ, Jesus is trans, Jesus is whatever they want them to be. But why they still bother to say that? Why they don't just open another shop? They know that if they still wear the cloak of Christianity, they can deceive more people.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And it's why it's so deadly, so dangerous. It is a form of deception that is, satanic, actually.
Satanic,
and
absolutely.
We're seeing that lie being manifest in the church. Gender ideology is a weird, it's a strange thing. This is not something I would have predicted 10 years ago. I've got kids that are elementary and middle school age. We homeschool. I never would have predicted in gender ideology. No. I certainly saw the homosexual movement. I certainly saw all that and how that was moving on the marriage issue, but never did I ever think that it would go to the area of a gender ideology until just, maybe 7-8 years ago.
5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
5 minutes ago.
It's crazy. And so you're seeing this, and it's just bizarre to think that these ideas, gender ideology and Marxism, would be connected.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let me really comment on that, because it is nothing new. Okay, Mao during Mao's reign, and he absolutely did the same thing, but opposite. So he wanted to erase gender, and he wants get rid of toxic femininity. And he felt that was bourgeois, being beautiful, being kind, that's bourgeois. He wants revolutionary masculinity. So as women, we have to get rid of our femininity. We have to be toughened up. And before, we have Supergirl and Superwoman. In China, we have iron girls. We're all iron girls. We're just as strong as men. Whatever men can do, we could do better. And so back then, if you go to China, and from distance, you can't tell women from men because we all look the same. Mm. We all have the gray, colorless, shapeless clothes, and we talk the same, we think the same, we believe we are the same. So Mao did that before the American Marxists. Of course, if you know history, you say, oh, this is history repeating. It's just opposite. But it doesn't matter. What they want to do is erase anything that's traditional, anything that's normal. Now they want to change biology. And that's alarming. That's absolutely. But people who know the past will recognize right away.
So you're looking for a university that's perfect for you, a school that has anything you could possibly need.
Anything?
You want a place that has the programs you want to study, and maybe a few more, just in case you change your mind.
I think I'm going to sign up for the fashion design program.
All right. A place with state-of-the-art facilities. I mean, look at this campus.
And who doesn't love big-time sports?
And great recreational activities.
Okay, now we're on a roll. Somewhere you can hike, slide, strike, shoot, climb, eat, and most importantly, eat. You want a place that takes you to space? Okay, maybe not, but we can teach you how to fly, or pastor a church, or run a business. And all that with a great view? Yeah, I think I know a place.
Yeah, it's truly bizarre. That is a by the way, a great anecdote, because I did not know that with regard to Mao and iron women. But it certainly makes sense to blur those distinctions so that everyone is just citizen, or in the Russian sense, comrade.
Slave.
Yeah, there's
Slave.
Yeah, slave. Right. Yes.
Not citizen.
Not citizen.
Citizen implied you have some rights. No, we're just slaves.
Right. Absolutely. Certainly under Marxist oppression, communist oppression. Absolutely. So, to the youngest generation living in the United States, that there's this certain affinity towards compassion and empathy and love. What would be your message to young people growing up in the freest country in the world, growing up as Tony Perkins once said at Family Research Council? He said, most kids today were born on third base. They were born in a country that had defeated Hitler and had defeated Stalin, and basically the Soviet Union had fell. They didn't see any of this stuff. They just grew up after that. They were born into a United States that had defeated those old powers, and now you have a new rising power and a new rising threat. They don't see it. How do we win them back? How do we win this next generation back?
Well, I always say history. We have to teach them real history. We did not defeat Stalin. We defeated Nazi, and we helped communism to rise. We helped Stalin to expand Soviet Union and to oh my God, that's like almost like half of the world if you look at the map. After the World War II. They turned China red. And then Korea, we did not win. We did not win World War II. We have to not just learn history they don't know, we have to relearn a lot of the history. And so to me that's the key, to know history, to know real history. And then to get rid of that toxic compassion. We have to love truth first, above all. If they demand you love something, but you don't love truth, reject it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And speaking of the truth, we have the First Amendment in our Constitution. It's under attack today like never before in the Western world, and especially in the United States. We no longer have freedom of conscience or freedom of speech. Why is it, though, that we're seeing this being attacked so harshly by the left? I mean, you even go out in California, they're outlawing certain forms of political satire in the state of California.
Memes, yes.
Yeah.
You have to understand, communism is a religion. Communism is also slavery. They want to own every part of you. They want to control every aspect of your life. More than anything, they want to control your mind. And so, of course, that also means they'll control your speech. If you, during the Cultural Revolution, if you see one thing wrong, even just slip of tongue, you will be denounced. Some end up in jail, some end up being executed, because words matter. Words to them are weapons, so they want to get rid of it. And so communism is scared of a free mind and free speech the most. And of course, they go after they want to disarm the citizens. And that's exactly what the CCP did. In every communist country, if you know the history, they want to disarm because they're afraid. With arms, the people can defend themselves. That's why we know the reason we have Second Amendment is to defend our First Amendment. And you see this, and in the Democratic, I call it Communist Democratic Party, they are against all this. They are against really our very funding.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm I want to turn then now to something else that we're seeing. I mean, literally as we're in the middle of this interview, there's rocket fire, there's missiles raining down on Israel from Iran. We feel like the world is on the brink of World War III, maybe. Praying that does not happen. But it's going to take strong leadership in order to ensure that doesn't happen. Leadership from the United States, leadership from the West. But we see on college campuses, Liberty University is strong in our support of Israel and of the Jewish people. But we saw last spring all kinds of protests in favor not just of the Palestinian people, but in favor and support of Hamas, which is a terrorist organization.
Yeah.
There was a viral video that went out last year on TikTok, which was a speech that was given by Osama bin Laden, a speech that he had given about the West. It was kind of this letter post-mortem that was shared. And there were a number of young people on college campuses that were saying, well, maybe he was right, and maybe the West was the villain, and maybe the United States is really the villain, and maybe he's the hero, he's the martyr, and maybe Hamas are the good guys, and maybe Israel's the bad guy. How is this connected to Marxist ideology?
This is absolutely the result of Marxist ideology, the indoctrination of the young people. It's very simple. The core of Marxism is oppressors versus oppressed. And that's what Mao used in China. And so he mobilized 95% of the population, because most of them, 95% of them are peasants. Most of them are landless peasants. So he mobilized them and just say, the reason you are poor, not because you have bad luck, not because you don't work hard. The reason you are poor is because they're rich. That's it. Oppressor and versus oppressed. That was such an alien thoughts to the peasants, traditional peasants. But they were able to convince them, turn them into revolutionaries. And that has been ever since the guiding principle of Marxist ideology. So how do you decide what's right, what's wrong? The stronger is wrong. The weaker is right, period. Yeah. And that's simplified. And that's the danger of Marxist ideology. They absolutely make everything black and white and very simple, right and wrong. They don't question. They don't question how come? How come this is this way? What is behind it? What's the reason behind it? They don't. Very simple. The weaker is always wrong. And those campus protesters, they're not against Israel. They're not really protesting for the Palestinian. And they're really against America.
Yeah,
and then it's always the case. And then they always burn the American flag. They always attack America. So, and I believe the saying is totally correct.
Yeah,
the issue is never the issue. The issue is revolution.
Yeah.
And the goal of that revolution is always America. So it is all of them anti-America. BMM, what's their target? America, right? And so America is their enemy.
Yeah.
And that is all because the indoctrination in our schools and universities.
That's so well said. The issue is never the issue. It is always about the revolution, and it is always about taking down America. I totally agree with that.
Yes, that's always the case.
And the other thing in Western media, especially in the United States, without any verification, many of our journalists will report on propaganda that Hamas will put out without any form of verification. They believe in the very, very worst representations of the state of Israel and the very best representations of Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. They will report almost automatically favorably anything that's coming from Hamas and the opposite for the state of Israel. Certainly we're seeing that.
Yeah.
Final
But I
question.
want to comment on it.
Yeah,
I want
yeah.
to comment on it.
Yeah,
How come? You will say, how come?
yeah.
Where are they from? They're from the same place. They're from universities and colleges that are controlled by the Marxists. They are the result of the indoctrination. That's why this is so true. Long march through institutions. You must have heard about that expression.
Yes.
And yeah, it is taking down the institution one by one. And because they have the people, they have decades control of the universities. They have produced generations of Marxists. Where are they now? They are in control of all our institutions. And that is why. That is why the Hollywood is, they're all kind of left-leaning. I call them communists. They are really communists. Our media, communists. Our government, yeah. Our military, look at our military. It's controlled by Marxists. That's how bad things are.
Do you, in all of this, and this is kind of my final question, do you have any sense of hope, optimism, how we could make a comeback, how there could be a revival in America, how we can take this country back for freedom and faith in our founding principles? Where do we get back?
I know. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
How old is your podcast?
We've been around for about 4 or 5 years.
Yes. See, 4 or 5 years. That's when people start to wake up. You know, I think I would say the turning point probably is in 2016. Something happened in 2016 and we know it. And that scared the left. That scared the communists. They turned the heat and too high, too fast, and wake up tons of people. And because of Donald Trump, and I think they're really, really scared. If there's no Donald Trump in 2016, I think we are still enjoying our jacuzzi, not realizing we're being boiled alive. And that is, I think that is the hope. And 2020 woke up even more people. Now, more and more people realized we have been conquered. We have been absolutely invaded by this alien ideology, totally the opposite of our founding principles. So I think because of that, and especially when I travel around the country, I met so many people. I met so many moms, just like me. 4 years ago, was like, paying no attention to politics. Now they're fighting. They're fighting for their lives and fighting for their kids. So I always say that's our hope. We just started. We were asleep while the left was taking over our institution. We finally wake up, so we have to just hurry up. We have to fight. Fight as if our life depend on it, and because it does.
Well said. She Van Fleet, thank you so much. Very important work. I want to recommend it to all our viewers and listeners. Mao's America, a Survivor's Warning. Thank you for writing it. Thank you for having the boldness and the courage to stand up and to speak out on the very threat that we're facing in the West, and that is Marxism. I appreciate so much you for standing for freedom and for joining the Give Me Liberty podcast.
Thank you so much.
Hey, did you find this helpful? I hope you did. Please like and subscribe, share with a friend, and also go to standingforfreedom.com where you can find more content, articles, podcasts, and our Theology of Politics series, all at standingforfreedom.com.